This is our CIP Self review in this new CTE portal, professional development. Again, we're holding, this is the 14th, and we will hold this again on the 16th. To kind of go over what the agenda is for today, it's really, I'm going to give you a quick little CTE 101, lay a little bit of groundwork and terminology only for the purposes of, I'm going to use some of that when I talk about the different sections, and it might help some of our newer teachers out a little bit. So I'll go through that. Then I'm going to go through what is the CIP Self review, go through the sections, go through the changes, and walk you through some of the documentation that needs to be there. And then at the end, I will go through the new CTE portal, which is replacing our the old navigator system. Now, I will also have time at the end for those of you, we're actually going to get access if your district is ready for that. And when I say if your district is ready for that, we'll talk about that at the end, because I know, well, I'll just save that portion for last. But even if you don't access today, you'll still have the resources in order to access the system when you're ready. So a little bit about CTE. I just wanted to give you your numbers, first of all. All of you are Macomb teachers. So Macomb, this is kind of, we are broken up into CPEDs. And I always get the question, what is CPED? A CPED is a career education planning district, and we're CPED 40. So if you ever get the question, and you probably will, you probably have before, and you might not have known what your CPED number is. You're CPED 40. Now, CPED 40, us, Macomb, along with St. Clair, and I actually think I might have some St. Clair folks on this one, or I don't know if they were attending Wednesday. But St. Clair and Macomb together, we actually make up a region for our Perkins, and we're region 16. So your numbers essentially are region 16 and CPED 40, and then obviously it goes down into your district. So those are kind of your numbers. The one thing I'm just going to point you to, and we're not going to go to this website just for the sake of time, is that I wanted to go through, I get a lot of questions sometimes about, oh, I teach this class and I want it to be CTE, or no, this is a CTE class, but then I look at it and I'm like, it's really not. So I want to make a distinction that in order to be considered career and technical education, that all CTE programs are applied for through the Office of Career and Technical Education. Like an application goes through, a program design goes through, and then once approved, the state gives everyone a program serial number or your PSN. So if you have a PSN, you know you're officially a CTE program. And once you become a CTE program, you are subject to review from the state as well as from the ISD. It's mandated. If you're unsure of what your PSN is, or what programs are approved for your district, you can find all of that at cetusreports.com. And I am going to share out this PowerPoint as well, just so you guys know. cetusreports.com, and under program details, you kind of see the screenshot. You can find the taxonomy for your district. And by looking at the taxonomy, it shows the CIP codes and the PSNs for all district approved programs, okay? And the reason that I'm making that distinction is because that does happen quite a bit. Is you could have a class that you're teaching that is, it feels like CTE, it looks like CTE, right? And, but it's not part of that approved program. Then it's still a good class. It could be a great class, but it's not part of the CTE program. It really just falls into an elective. So it's important that we understand the distinctions and understand, because this whole PD is talking about when you have that designation of a career and technical education program, and you have that program serial number, and you are subject to these reviews, what they're reviewing is your CIP Self review. And that's what we're talking about today. What they're going to look at is these components that we're going to talk about. So just to kind of, the other thing I wanted to make sure is with the difference between a program versus a course. So a CTE program is a compilation of several CTE courses. It can be taught in 1 year, 2 years, however your district leadership in partnership with the teacher designs that program. and that each program falls into a CIP code. So health has CIP code, marketing has a CIP code, mechanical design has a CIP code. And the state defines the standards and segments for each CIP code, but the districts define which courses make up that program and then what segments and what order they're taught. So to better illustrate this, I just wanted to give you kind of, and this will help us when we get into, when we start looking at our standards in that portion of the CIP Self review, is that when you look, for example, you might, and these are totally arbitrary examples. This is not pulling from any individual's data. I made these numbers, I put these numbers in the order that I wanted. But you could have District X and they have a marketing program, and District Y has a marketing program. Both marketing programs have the same CIP code because that is state defined. Then the state gave them each their unique program serial numbers because each program, we have like 22, 23 marketing programs in our county. Every single one of them uses the same CIP code, but they all have their own program serial numbers. So as such, District X decides, okay, their first course, their class, course, whatever you want to call it, is marketing 1. They're going to do these segments, and they do marketing 2, then they have school store. Well, marketing Y might call their first class small business and their second class marketing, and they do the segments in this order. Neither of them are right or wrong. That's just a program design that they set up. And we're going to talk about program design a little bit later. But I just wanted to make sure that when we're talking about, when I get into the CIP Self review sections and we're talking about a program, if I'm saying that a component, like you have to upload this as a program, it means all as a program, the course. It's not just, if you have to put in your syllabus, it would be the syllabus for each course in the program because you're giving all a full view of what this program looks like. So it'll all come together, as we get a little bit farther. So that leads us to kind of where we are and why we're all together today. So when you have a PSN and when you have a career and technical education program, you could get what's called a track audit or a track review. And that's a technical review, assistance, and compliance. That's what track stands for. When track happens, what they look for at the program side, now, as far as like I'm concerned in the ISD, they might review some of our budget and our grant things. But when the program consultants come to the teachers and the program, what they're doing is they're following the CIP Self review this is the teacher's responsibility to keep track of. Now, when does the audit cycle happen? So it used to be that OCTE, the Office of Career and Technical Education, would come routinely every 5 years. And they did that in order to make sure they hit all programs. But what they did years ago is they changed it, and it's no longer, so if it was a 5-year cycle, we would probably have about 2 years left until they came to us. But now it's not based on a standard cycle. It is based on a risk assessment worksheet, which I'm not going to get into the risk assessment because that's a completely different review. But I just wanted you to know that really the reason it's so important for us to stay up to date on all of our CIP Self review components is because we don't know exactly when they're coming. They do the risk assessment based on, district data and regional data. They look at like our federal Perkins budget. There's all kinds of weighted factors that go into that. Also, the last time they reviewed, that's a weighted factor. Teacher turnover is a weighted factor. So we really don't know. We're not getting audited this year by OCT, I will say that, but we don't know what's up for next year. So that's the state audit. It's not a 5-year cycle anymore. It's based on this assessment, and we don't know when they're coming next. I'd imagine it's within the next 1 or 2 years though. That's just my gut, just because it's been a few years since they've been here. Now, the MISD audit, so this is because I'm your CPID, right? So I'm your CPID administrator for Macomb. So as the CPID administrator, the Office of Career and Technical Education says that I have to review 20% of programs annually, and that allows me to get through all programs. So each year I do select, and some of you on here might have been selected for that. And it's not me targeting programs. I try to do it pretty random. And it's me coming through and looking through your CIP and offering guidance so that we make sure we're up to date. So that is that. And you can kind of see this is the CIP self-review document that the state puts out, which I'll provide to you later. But you'll see that each CPED administrator is required to review 2%. I have to have it done every year by June 30th. For those programs who are chosen for that 20% review from the ISD, I let your district leadership know. I think it's usually like in February, March. I think it's like February, I let everybody know. And then I would usually hold a PD in like March, April for those teachers. This year, I don't know if I'll have to hold that PD because we'll have this and we'll have the recording, but we can kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. But you will know if you're one of those programs chosen, probably early spring. And then I do the review at the end of the year. So that's kind of the track audit cycle as well as the ISD review process. So let's get into CIP self-review. Okay, so our CIP self-review, many of you are familiar with this version on the left, and you're used to this ordering process where it's CO1, teacher certification, CO2, and then we jump right to CO6, C10, C13, and C16. Now, if you're new to career and technical education, you might wonder why in the heck were these big jumps happening anyway in the numbering system? And if, indulge me for a minute, if you walk down memory lane, back the version before this, if I was to go back another one, there actually was 16 sections. And that was before we did things digitally. There were 16 sections. We each had these giant, I was still teaching at this time too. So you had these giant track binders. They were awful. And they had 16 sections in them, and you would put all your documentation in these giant binders so that when the state came to review, you had them there. Well, then they went and they consolidated some of the 16 sections, but never changed the numbering or the order. So now they have, starting this year, these are the new sections for CIP for the CIP self-review. It's the first two stayed the same. Advisory is still the third section, but it's just being numbered properly as CO3. And then you'll see that C10 was actually broken into program delivery, work-based learning, and leadership. Now, those aren't new. They used to live under C10. There was like a lot of stuff. That was like the bulk. Anytime I did a PD in the past, I would say, this is the meat and potatoes of your CIP self-review. It's because everything lived under C10. Now they've just kind of broken them out and given program delivery its own section, work-based learning its own section, and then leadership its own section. And then CO7, equity and access, and CO8, post-secondary connection, is also still broken out, which it was. But with this, before I go into each section, because I'm going to take a little bit of time today, go through each section, show you what it looks like in the portal, and show you what, and tell you, and then walk through some of the templates that you will have to upload into these sections. So that's kind of the new process for CIP self-review. So let's jump into, I'm gonna go really quick because I thought I saw something. Yes, before I move on, because this was a comment to what we said earlier, in the chat, Claire Bryson from Chippewa mentioned that even within the same district, the same program CIP operating in different schools will have different PSNs. So that is completely correct. So if you are at Dakota High School teaching marketing and you are at Chippewa Valley High School teaching marketing, they both have the same CIP code number for marketing, but Dakota's marketing program will have its own PSN, and Chippewa Valley will have its own marketing PSN. So thank you for that clarification, Claire. Jumping into the standard CTE instructor. So basically for CTE, you have to have a there's only a few ways you can teach in CTE, essentially. You either have a CTE certification, whether it be standard because you just got it or professional, or you have a annual career authorization. I'm not going to go too much into detail about these particular components. I will show you where I've provided resources for you. But it is important to note there is no flexibility here. This is one of the areas that if a teacher is not properly certified or their certification drops off and they don't renew in time, that this is one of those areas that if OCTE finds it, that is a funding recapture. Some of the other things you'll find that it might not necessarily be a funding recapture. It could generate like you have to write a plan of improvement, and which is not fun. So stay away from that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come and take money away. This one it does. So it is important for all of you to make sure that you maintain your certifications. The one distinction I will make is that if you're teaching under an annual career authorization, that means that your district applied for that because you have industry experience, right? You're coming from industry, you have the recent and relevant, and I'll show you where that's defined when I show you the resources. But you don't own that, the district does. So the district has to apply for that each year. It is now, they did change, they defined what recent and relevant meant. And they also changed it. It used to be that you could only renew like 6 years and you had to be on credit track. All of that's gone. A district is assuming that you have a high effective or highly effective rating and the district still has that position open and they want to retain you, they can apply again for 10 years. So that's a distinction that happened recently. And just, I'm sure you all know by now, but these used to be called occupational certs and interim occupational. They just changed the wording. Nothing else really changed. You'll also find that they're taking, as of recently, they're taking and making it easier for CTE teachers by adding this endorsement into your teaching endorsement to kind of like consolidate it into one area so you don't have to renew twice, which is actually a really nice change. So, but essentially for this section, you have to be teaching under a certification or annual authorization. And it has to be tied to the program that you're teaching in. So even if I go and say, you know what, I know a lot about robotics and I've coached Lego robotics or I've done this, blah, 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 blah. But I'm a business teacher, I'm a marketing teacher. My certification says one thing, you have to teach under whatever your certification was. I have provided this link, it would be active once I send out the PowerPoint, but I've also dropped this under a resource folder for everyone. So you can see what endorsements are actually able to teach and what CIP codes. They did just update this in June of 2020. So I think it's I know when I first left the classroom and started doing CTE administration work, this was like my Bible because I was like, I don't know, I knew my area, but I didn't know everybody else's. So this I think is a really useful document that will be provided under your resource section. So when we look at what needs to be uploaded, because again, each of these sections I'm going to tie directly to your CTE portal and your CIP self-review uploads. Technically, if you have a standard or a professional CTE certificate and it's in MOEX, which they are, or you have an annual career authorization, which is in MOEX as well, there's nothing you need to upload into the CTE portal. I'll say that again. There's nothing you need to upload into the CTE portal if it is in MOEX, because the state's going to go and check MOEX anyway. There will be a section where you answer what type of certification you have, but no upload is necessary. Now, if you teach in an area that requires an additional license, like maybe you're giving CNA and it's part of your curriculum, and you have to have a CNA or a license to do that portion of the curriculum, you could upload that. If you have a builder's license and you want to put your builder's license, cosmetology, they have a special license. So that's only if it's applicable to your program. You could upload other, it would require, it's not a requirement, but like if I when I was in teaching in Microsoft or in business, I had all my Microsoft certifications, and I could have put those up there. If I didn't, it wouldn't have made a difference for the CIP Self review. But that's the case with those. And this is what the page looks like. So I am going to give you a screenshot of each of the CTE portal pages before we go live into it. Yes, the CTE portal is live. It's up, it's running, and ready for upload. It is a little glitchy, but I'll talk about that when we get into it. But you'll see that under CO1, it talks about a lead teacher, and I will address that. It says certification, and it's actually a drop down right here under the certification, because you get to pick what you have. Do you have a professional CTE cert? Do you have a standard CTE cert? Do you have an ACA? This is only if there is a post-secondary, if you're teaching a post-secondary partner is coming in to teach in your program. And then here's where you could upload additional license if it's applicable. So it's pretty standard. You'll notice that it's not asking you, there's no upload link for the certification. Like I said, there's nothing you would upload under CO1 if you fall under one of those two categories. Moving into CO2. I will, okay, thank you. So I've been asked to kind of define MOEX. So MOEX is the, so I don't know what it stands for, Michigan something certification system. It basically tracks, like when you get a MOEX login, like I have a MOEX login, and when I go in there, it houses my certifications. It knows when my, that's where I renew my certifications through MOEX. I wish I knew that. If anybody knows what MOEX officially stands for, please put it in the chat. But it's where all the certifications for education are housed. Michigan Education Occupational Certification System, something like that. Yes, thank you. And when a district goes and applies for an annual career authorization, they apply through MOEX and they're granted. So it's really just a database of teacher certification is what MOEX is. If you don't have a MOEX login, you won't be able to get into the CTE portal, okay? What you'll have to do first is you'll have to contact, because I can't get you access to MOEX. That's bigger than me because it's an MDE system. So you would have to contact the certification office and get a MOEX login. If you have a teacher certification, a professional CTE certification, or an ACA, you can get a MOEX login, okay? And then that'll allow you, that's for your PD. So for instance, when you get Sketchies, say you apply for Sketchies, and you go and I fill out that paperwork for you, and then MDE emails you after this for you to fill out the evaluation to get the Sketchies. It's going to take you into MOEX, and that's where you fill those out. So it's also a like a repository of your professional learning that then you would go and renew your certification through. So that's kind of MOEX. Thank you for those who put the definition of it in the chat. Michigan Online Educator Certification System. Thank you. That is the full name of MOEX. That's a good note. I never thought to put that in. So, so PD. Let's go to my PD slide now. So for professional development, wait, let me go back up for a minute. Okay, professional development. Each teacher in a PSN needs to complete their own professional development. So this is at the program side. Actually, you know what, I'm going to go back to this lead teacher because I skipped over that, and I think that that's important because there's a lot of you that teach in partnership with other teachers. So if you remember in Navigator, when we were doing that, your CTE or your building administrator would select, they would choose, they'd activate your CIP Self review, and then let's say there's 2 business teachers in the same building. I'll use Dakota as an example again, since we're already talking about them. let's just say that there are two business teachers. They both teach in the business program, right? When we use Navigator, Claire Bryson, she's on here today, she would go and she would say, okay, teacher, this teacher right here, that's going to be the lead teacher. That's going to be the teacher who's responsible for uploading everything into Navigator. That doesn't necessarily exist in the CTE portal. There is still a need for a lead teacher, if you have a partner teacher, to say that, okay, I'm going to upload our gap analysis, or I'm going to upload our instructional design, the things that are common between the two of you. But both of those teachers have the same access in this CTE portal. So teacher A can be uploading their own professional development, and teacher B can be uploading their own professional development. Teacher A can be uploading their syllabus, and teacher B can be uploading their syllabus. So it no longer relies solely on just that one teacher to upload everything for both of them. But I will say, in a way, I mean, that's a good thing. And it also creates a challenge in a way, because it is going to be important if you are in that situation where you have two of you teaching in the same program at the same building, you're going to have to communicate so that when you log in, you say, you know what, I'm going to upload our articulation agreements and our program of studies. I got that. Or then maybe the other teacher says, okay, I will upload our gap analysis and our instructional design. And so there will have to be some type of coordination between the two of you just to make sure that you're not duplicating efforts. So that's the lead teacher component. So when we get into CO2 and it talks about professional development, this is where there's been a little bit of a change. Now, some of these sections, when I showed you that one slide about the different numbering order and that everything we've always had to do, it's just pulled out into its own sections. That is true, but there's also been changes to the language and to what is required to be uploaded for some of the sections. And so I'm going to highlight those changes today. So for CO2, it was that each teacher in a PSN must complete PD. It used to read industry-specific professional development within the last 5 years. Now the tone has changed from OCTE. Now what they would like is they want industry-specific professional development on an annual basis, and they want you to keep track of your professional development annually for a length of 5 years, and then one can drop off. And then, so if you go from 2015 to 2020, then next year is 2016 to 2021, 2017 to 2022. So it's a 5-year span, and you're identifying your industry specific professional development. Now, we don't have to go, but this is starting now, moving forward, right? So if you had some last year that you want to put in, because last year we had at least a half a normal of a year, and then identify this year's, you can do that and start running. I don't expect, and I don't believe OCT expects us in 2020 to go back and say, oh, in 2015, unless you have that readily available and you want to fill it in, go ahead. But the directive coming from the ISD right now is that unless it's readily available and you can just plug those years into the spreadsheet I'm about to go through, I don't expect you to go back and try to dig and dumpster dive for some of this stuff. You know, we're going to start fresh now. We're going to move forward from here on out. So what can be used for this? So individual record of professional development that demonstrates sustained effort to improve knowledge and skills in one of the following subjects. And I'm not going to read through those, but I will point a few out. You see, obviously there's the aspects of industry and the related integration. So if you're doing a professional development on how to bring in algebra standards into a career and technical education, that's technically would count. So all of that is good stuff. So this slide will be available to you. This is the template that was created to assist all of you capture what OCTE would be looking for. Essentially, what to upload would be the professional development template, and I'll go over what that looks like, that shows the 5-year record of CIP specific PD, indicating at what level you received it, and then a copy of your district provided, which can be printed right on MOAX. Now, there was a little discrepancy. Some of us in my position were wondering, well, if we just provide the template, can't we combine these, right? And then it was kind of determined that actually might be more work on you, because then that would make you have to put in all of your district provided PD into this. Why do that if it already exists in MOAX? So the guidance that I'm giving is you're going to put your industry specific in this template, and then you're going to upload your MOAX for your district provided PD. So let me show you. I'm going to do a new share really quick just to give you a good picture of what this looks like. Okay, so here is the template. You'll see that, you have the same district, zip code, all of these templates that I'm going to show you today that were created. The goal was to keep them visually similar so that you get used to using them, right? Visually similar and similar in the flow and how they work. So you'll see that the date with year, so it could be October 1st, 2020, you attended, blah, blah, blah. Here's the description. And then over here on the side, all my little windows are in my way. Over here on the side, you'll see level offered at, and this is actually a drop down. And all I put in was district provided, regional, ISD, state, national. So if this was a state conference you went to, or maybe it was something that we did at the ISD, like today, the CTE Portal CIP Self review. So maybe you put in that because that was a regional and ISD level. And then the length of the training. Now where this drop down is coming from, I'm pulling from this key down here. So if you were to change any of these, it would change that drop down. So just note to self on that one. The template also comes with a directions at the top, which maybe if I zoom out, I have so many things that I'm trying to navigate my window pan. So if you navigate through the top, you could put the date, and this is for the point of this one, I guess, so this is intended for your industry specific, and the directions say that. Use this to put your industry specific for your program. So if I am teaching in accounting and I'm also teaching in the business program, so I have 2 different CIP codes, I would technically need to have this for each CIP code, the way that OCT is asking us to do this, which is kind of inconvenient, and I recognize that, but don't shoot the messenger, because that's what you would upload. So that's but sometimes the industry specific could count for both. So work with your individual CT director on how they want you to capture that. But I will say, don't overthink it when it comes to this. OCT, when they do an audit or they do a review, they really only want to see 2 things. They want to see the template that shows that you've had industry specific and at what level, who offered it. And they want to see your MOAX, so your district provided. And part of the reason they're asking for the district provided is because they want to see what type of professional development is being provided within the districts. So that being said, that is the PD template. What if the classes are being offered through a university? I guess it depends on how who they're offering it to. So say it's Oakland University and they are doing and it's open to anyone in the state. Technically, they're running a state PD. Like right now, this is really, I'm only opening it up for our region. I didn't invite people from the west side of the state because I'm training our region. So I guess it depends on the audience and who they're talking to. Like if it's that, I hope that helps. Yeah, if it's Florida of hospitality. So if it's Florida and you're all the way in Michigan, that's kind of, they're doing a national thing. So the reach is national. Let me switch back over. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, moving on. So this is what it looks like in the CTE portal. You'll see again, there's the lead teacher. So you will have to decide whose name is going to go in that lead teacher slot, because you'll see lead teacher a lot. And then that teacher would upload their evidence. And then if there's an additional teacher, they would put their name and they would upload their evidence. If there's a third teacher, you would just add a third teacher and it would expand, and then they could upload theirs. So essentially that's all that's needed. And I'll show you, because once you click on the upload, it looks a little different as well. And that's what I'll show you when we go into the live system. Okay, advisory. I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this because I did put out an advisory committee video, I believe back in October, and I'm going to show you where those resources are if you needed to dive deeper in that. But, essentially we as a region, I shouldn't even say that, because some of you do an amazing job with your advisory committee meetings. I've seen some pretty great stuff. I've seen some, and I think we're getting better. Within the last, I think 2 or 3 years, I have seen dramatic growth in this particular section for our Macomb program. So kudos to all of you for the strides that you've made around advisory. But the role is for the planning, the implementation, operation, promotion, maintenance of the program. They become a really powerful tool if used correctly. So what are the requirements? This is where I think we've made the biggest strides. Is I think there was a big misconception in the past regarding what was needed for advisory. Was it just 2 meetings? Well, yes, you have to have 2 meetings, but you also have to have an advisory roster, which is independent of a meeting. And you'll see that very clearly in the CTE portal. So let me just talk quickly about the roster. Well, actually, before I do that, I have this note, and you'll see it a few times, because this is something OCTE wrote that I don't know if everybody knows. So the meeting and the meeting agendas in detailed minutes with a list of attendees that reflect committee instruction, recommendations, and desired outcome. And the part that I wanted to focus on this is that detailed minutes with a list of attendees. So what OCT is asking, or what they're distinguishing here, is that yes, I have an advisory roster, and these people are they're connected with my program in one way or another. They're all going to be invited to my meeting. But once I have that meeting, on my minutes, I need to include maybe the roster, and I could just put check marks next to attendance, not attendance. That's why it's important. You want more people on your advisory roster than the minimum requirement, because I'm going to tell you what the minimum requirement is, but you still have to have those same ratios at the meeting or in some way connected, whether it be they couldn't attend, but they sent something into you via proxy. So I always err on, it's better to have more than just the right amount, okay? So when I go into what is membership, who needs to be on your roster? So membership for an advisory, it's business and industry, post-secondary, parent, and then this is a newbie right here. Special population representative used to be an optional for your program roster, your advisory roster. Now it's a requirement, and that's because of Perkins 5 legislation. The optional people are the administrators, counselors, students, academic teachers. Now, I had an email question come in a few weeks ago about, they really wanted to get a lot of student involvement, and almost like a student roundtable type of thing. And if it was best to do that separately or add them onto on the roster. Well, my response was, if you do it together, they're not considered part of your membership. So if they attend, if there's just a few of them, sure, attend and have that bigger conversation, but they're non-voting members. But if it's overwhelmingly student-based and student-focused in a student user group, that's really something different than advisory. That is, you're having a student meeting, an advisory group. So be careful with that. I think it's great to have that student voice there, but if the purpose of it is for, really like a student feedback type of panel and discussion, and that's not necessarily the same thing as your advisory committee meeting. That's talking about industry standards and industry professional development and industry trends. So it's a little different. Another requirement is that the chairperson comes from business and industry. The majority membership has to be from business and industry, and you must meet a minimum of 2 years for this, for 2 times per year. For this year, it can be virtual. A lot of teachers are doing that. Look at, we're doing a PD virtual. So it's nice that we can have that flexibility now. One of the I did provide an advisory committee template for all of you to use that went along with the video that explained all of this. Again, I will go back to all of these templates I'm sharing with you today are not mandatory. Your district might already have one that they want you to use, and you always err on that template that they want you to use, as long as the minimum fields are, you have to have the member name, the business name, the title, which area they represent, their contact information, email and phone, and you have to identify the chair. That came straight from the state. These are the required fields that must be on the roster. So if you look at this, and this is one template, I'm not necessarily going to take you into live because the video does that. Again, you'll see that the top looks very, very similar. There's that drop down key where it's saying who they represent. Here's the key at the bottom. And you'll also notice that I added to this template, it's color coded in a way because I made green, those are voting members. The green are required members and the red are the optional members. And then this is the language directly from OCTE's toolkit. And I just put it right on the roster because I just felt that that would be the best place for it. So you don't have to dig for it, but it talks about the majority from business. It talks about the special population representative and who that could be. It could be some of your parapro could be, if you have a parapro who works with your special population students, it could be them. It could be a counselor in your building who works with predominantly with some of your special populations. Well, they would be serving in that role because they have a good knowledge of those students and different ways to do the curriculum for them. So keep that in mind that in this definition or from that, it does go into great detail and give you exactly what could be used for that special population representative. So what is now let's talk about the meeting minutes. So now that's your roster. That's making up your roster, which honestly, it seems overwhelming at first because you're like, where do I find these people? You would be very surprised at how many you could probably find if you just asked. In the advisory toolkit, at the end of it, it has pre-done like letters or emails that are already written and you just customize to fill in your specific ask. Utilize that stuff. It's already done. Why reinvent the wheel? But you could start, finding local businesses or local partners and just start emailing out, send a letter. Even maybe before, if you're not comfortable making a phone call right at first, maybe send the letter just to get them to connect and then follow up with a phone conversation if they're interested. So start getting creative. I know that when done well, advisory committees are fantastic and they can really provide a lot of support to your students in your program and connections for your seniors for when they leave if they're really tied in a meaningful way. So one of the things that it talks about program advisory committee, defines, and I highlighted the equipment in red only because this is also the advisory committee section of your CIP Self review is where you put in your equipment list. Your equipment list, such as the software that you use. Now, I'm not talking about the supplies, like I don't need to know that you have 500 nails, right? It's more I have a CNC machine that was purchased in 2016, blah, 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 and it is in my classroom. I have a 3D printer. I have computers loaded with 2016 software using Windows 10. So it's that type of stuff that they want to know as far as equipment. It's textbooks or it's online resources. I'm using Cengage, MindTap, latest version. So it's what curriculum, software, textbook. I have a textbook and it's this copyright. So that's what you're going to include on your equipment list. So when we look at it, we know what you're teaching from, with, through, on, that type of stuff. This is just and I have this in the resource folder that I'm going to share with you. OCTE did put out a potential template that you could use for minutes. But I also know I've seen great minute templates from some of the districts that within Macomb. So this is just, if you have no starting point and you don't know what you want to do on your minutes, please feel free to look at that template. But again, there's that note at the bottom that came straight from OCTE, is that meeting agendas and detailed list of attendees must reflect the program group. So keep that in mind. So for this section, what actually has to be uploaded? It is your advisory roster, your meeting 1 with agenda and minutes. So technically that should be like 2 check marks. Meeting 2 with agenda and minutes, and your equipment list. Those are the 4 sections for upload. It looks like this in the portal. So you'll see when we go in there, you'll see there's the roster. When you click on the program meeting, you'll actually, when this opens up, you'll see meeting 1 and meeting 2, they actually define it. And then your upload for your equipment. And you can put all equipment on one list. It doesn't have to be several different. They don't specify that. Okay, so standards and content. This is your gap analysis, your instructional design, your syllabus, and your safety, all of which have been the same. There has been a bit of a change around the safety component, which I did do an instructional video about regarding the template. So I'll kind of point you in that direction when we get there. But essentially, for those of you who are newer to CTE, essentially when we talk about career and technical education and we talk about standards and what you're supposed to teach in each CIP code, they come off a document called a gap analysis, right? The gap analysis, it defines the different segments and the performance elements and for each individual CIP. So marketing has its own gap analysis. Mechanical drafting has its own gap analysis. Mechatronics, own gap analysis. So now within that, and I'm going to show you a little snapshot of it. So your gap analysis, it always consists of, it has all of the different performance elements and skills, but it identifies what are segments. And if you think of segments, there's 12 of them. Each CIP code has 12 segments. They're different for each CIP. But those 12 segments are how you're saying they're big picture topics like, well, I'll show you when we get into one, but they're big picture topics. And then you take those topics and then you look at the performance elements that are tied to them and you put them somewhere throughout your courses in the program. And that makes up the whole program. So if we look at, let me go to, I think I have, okay, so here is a gap analysis. I can't see it. This is the business one, right? So right here, you're gonna find the segments. These are all the segments. So segment 1 is international business. Obviously, international business is not segment 1 for mechatronics. This is unique to business. So you have to look at what yours are. Then over here, this is where you have your knowledge, your skill, your performance element, and your measurement criteria. I just kind of blew this up right here. where you have to gauge the level of how deep you are teaching is at the performance element. So if I scan down here, boom, right there, that little number 1 right there, that's my first performance element that I have to put on my gap analysis, whether I am at a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, or an N. And then down here, I just kind of blew that up so you can see what those numbers meant. But essentially, a 4 is, you know, they exceed and they can teach it to somebody else. 3 is they can do it on their own. 2, they can do it with help. 1 is they're not exposed, and N are exposed to the task, and N is they are not exposed. Now, I will say, if you have, if you look at your gap analysis, so there's 2 components of it. You fill out all your performance elements. And then if you were to scan down and you were to see, because OCTE has done this, and they've come back to us on something like this, where they said, you know what, Shannon, this program, they have 90% of their gap analysis has all of their performance elements as 2s, which means that students can accomplish things only with help. And they have a problem with that, which I guess I could see why, because they're basically saying, well, they can't do anything without me. And OCT doesn't like that. So if you find that your students are really requiring a lot of help on a lot of this, you might need a little bit of a curriculum alignment. What they like to see is a spread between 4, 3, and 2. Now, if you have a 1 or an N marked for any of your performance elements, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I've seen an N and it worked where they're not exposed, so they would put an N. But anytime you put a 1 or an N, anytime, for any reason, then you have to move over here to this side and write a mini plan of improvement. So let me give you an example where I saw an N. There was an N, and normally if I didn't see a plan of improvement, I have to kick it back, and OCT would flag it as you have to. Now that's a compliance issue, right? But I've also seen it where an N was marked, but over here on the side, it said, well, I need a CNC machine, and we're buying it in the spring, or we're buying it, it's slotted to be bought like next school year. I don't remember when they did it, but there's nothing wrong with putting an N and putting that. Like, that's a good plan of improvement. They don't expect you to teach it if you don't have the equipment, but you do have a plan that's compliant. So that's kind of how you fill that out. Now, once you have all of your N1, 2, 3, 4s and your performance elements, you go through and you look at your segments, and you figure out what order you're going to teach them in and in what courses. And that's where the instructional design comes in. So the instructional design then goes, and I just gave you a screenshot. This is what it would look like if you were teaching a 1-year class by semester. I threw in a trimester one too. And this is probably our most common in CTE, is a 2-year course by semester. So you would fill out and you would mark, you know, this is marketing 1, first semester, marketing 1, this teacher, we're doing 2, 5, 12, 9, like, and you fill it out. The one thing you can't do is you can't double segment. So I'm just going to tell you which one's right, which one's wrong if you kind of look at this. So you'll see that in this top one is actually the one that's filled out correctly. And the reason it's filled out correctly is because I've only claimed each segment 1 time. So my business networking and communication class teaches 1, 3, 4, 9, 11, and 12. And this is a 1-year program. And my business presentation and organization, which I made up all these names just so you guys know, it teaches 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10, which those 2 courses together, so remember, CTE courses make up my program. So these 2 CTE courses make up my business admin program. Now down here, the one that's filled out wrong, and I'll show you why it's filled out wrong, is you'll notice same course. I have 1, 2, but if you look at the next semester here, I also put segment 2 down. I can't do that. I can't put, now I could be teaching components of that segment. Maybe I introduce it first semester, but I really dive into it second semester. So second semester is where I should claim that segment. It doesn't mean I can't talk about it in the other class. It just means that on this instructional design, I am only going to identify each of my segments one time throughout the course of the program. And this is one your CTE directors know very well. So if this seems confusing to you, please go and talk to them. They are really the backbone to helping make sure that your instructional design is what it should be, because they need to know what it is, because they do the data side for the state and they must match. So what you say as a teacher, what you upload for your instructional design has to be exactly what your CT administrators put into our state data system, which you don't have to worry about, but they do. So those have to match. There has to be a communication piece. So you have your gap analysis that defines what levels you're going with the skills, and it tells you what your segments are. And then it's your instructional design where you map out where you're teaching those throughout your courses. The other component in this is your syllabus. So your syllabus, this is, I'm not gonna, beat a dead horse on this one, but these are the required components for a syllabus, like, the date, the course description. Do you know how many syllabus I see where there's not even a course description? It should tell the students and the students' parents about what they're going to learn in the class. Your syllabus cannot only be a classroom, cell phone or discipline policy. They can be on there, don't get me wrong, but that can't be the only thing. That don't lead with that. So my advice to you is make sure you have a syllabus that first defines the course, what they're going to learn. It has to be tied to their segments. You have to define and put all of these components in. It is in the CTE toolkit, so I'm going to move past this. It does identify what software or textbook or supplies they need in post-secondary connections. So all of those are required. OCTE can be sticklers about what is required on a syllabus. So make sure if you don't know or you want to do a cross-check with your syllabus to make sure you have all the right components, please make sure after this you take a look at that toolkit. It's on pages 11 through 12. And again, you will get this presentation. And then lastly, for safety, the really big change for safety this year was that for uploading into the CTE portal, we used to have to provide student names and, they would sign off an initial, or you black out their names and you upload them all into Navigator. That requirement is gone for the CTE portal. Now they just want kind of a holistic record of what safety is built into your program, what safety training, and the frequency of when it occurs. So I did build this template. And again, there's that drop down, here's the program, here's the name of the training. You'll find some programs, you're doing safety training all the time. You're going to do a safety training on each machine as they use it, or you're doing bloodborne pathogen, then you're doing CPR, then you're doing bodily fluids, like if you're in medical, there's all kinds of, so everyone's safety training is going to look different. But what OCTE is looking for is really a record that you have a thought out safety training built into your program, and that it's timely and throughout. Now, you'll also find that when I did the safety training video, I did also make a note though, if you're in some of those, if I'm training everyone on a lathe or a drill press or something that it is relatively dangerous on a car lift, you better believe not only are they going to be trained, but I am going to keep a record of each student who has done it and when they've done it for my own just compliance and well-being. So while I might not need to upload that into the CTE portal, it very well might still be a requirement from your CTE director in good practice for you to make sure that you have, okay, my student was trained on the proper use of a drill, and this is the date that they accomplished that. Or you give a safety test and you put that into your records just so you have it. I'm just here to explain what has to go up in the CTE portal. But good practice would be is that you're still making sure, especially in those maybe more, I don't want to say dangerous because they're not dangerous, but areas where there could be potential injury, that you make sure that you document the training and when and that the student received it. Because what you don't want is all of a sudden somebody to hurt themselves and it come back and they say, well, they never trained me on that. Well, if you want to make sure you have a record to say, yes, I did, here it is, here's the date I did it and you were present. Like, so just be careful of that. So what to upload? You upload your gap analysis, your instructional design, your syllabus for each program, and the safety template. And it looks like this. So you'd upload the gap, you'd upload the syllabus, you'd upload the instructional design, and then you'd upload the safety template. Simple as that. And all those components. All right, getting into work-based learning, I'm going to go a little bit quick because I just put out a work-based learning video, and I want to give you guys a slight little break and show you where some of the resources are before we go into the ending portion of this. So work-based learning, it is required that by the end of the program, all students have some level of work-based learning, a minimum of 1 experience. And that has not changed. That's not a new requirement. The things that have changed with work-based learning is that now we have career awareness, career exploration, career preparation, career training. OCT has defined them. If you haven't had a chance to watch that work-based learning video where I explain in full what these are and how to use the template, please do. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that for this particular training, just because I want to make sure we have time in the portal. But just to kind of say that what happened was no longer do you have to, again, track for the portal the student names and what they've done. They're looking at, on the teacher side, they're saying, show us as a program what work-based learning is built into your program. But the caveat to that is that then they said to CTE director something totally different, that, okay, but now we want you to record work-based learning at the student level. Well, those two things didn't mesh well together. So that's where the template came in, because it allows you to put in work-based learning as the program. If you had students who went above and beyond, that wasn't intended for all the class, then you could do that at the bottom. But please, I will say for this one, it is a little bit longer conversation and an explanation. So please watch the work-based learning video if you haven't, and before you start using this template, because this is a great resource. This is what you would upload essentially. And then it's also what your CTE directors can use to put in into the data system when they need to, when and if they need to. So essentially for CO5, what you would upload is your work-based learning template and then a training agreement. If your program, if you have students who are going out into industry and they're getting credit for that experience and you have training agreements and it's built into your program, then you would. If not, if it's just normal, okay, we did a field trip, we do job shadows, we do guest speakers, excuse me, you just need the template. This is only if students are going out and doing extended and you have a training agreement and training plan. What it looks like in the portal is you have your experience, you upload there, and then this is the optional, if you have students going out on training agreements, you would put a sample training agreement here. So that's the work-based learning one, pretty simple on that one. Now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna put this into the chat. I'm also going to pause for a minute. So if you're watching this video, you're gonna see a little pause. Okay, we are back. So as you, hopefully what you saw when you were in that Google Drive, just to kind of recap, all of the templates that I'm sharing today, as well as some of the OCTE's toolkits, like the advisory toolkit, you should have found under advisory. The CTE technical toolkit, that's also under there. The videos that I made regarding safety or work-based learning are in those particular folders. So if you need a recap on those, or if you didn't get a chance to watch them yet, they're there. Any other additional video that might be up and coming that I make for one of those different sections, I will also drop in there. So I just kind of want to make sure that you all had that as a resource for you. Before I move into leadership, I did want to make one comment about work-based learning that I don't know. I think I have it in the work-based learning video, but I do want to say too, is that, work-based learning, the requirement is, 1 by the end of the program, but the goal is really to move, we might start our level 1s in awareness, but then we really want to start moving students, giving them multiple work-based learning experiences if we can, or considering like, okay, here's my starting point. Maybe I only have one and I'm compliant, but how can I over time expand this and add in more? I think that was really the vision that OCT had around this work-based program, and identifying it at that program level is to assess where we are and really continually try to move students deeper and deeper along the continuum with work-based learning. So moving into leadership, student leadership, this is one that there's still, the template is still being developed and not out yet, but I still am going to talk about it, is that the, opportunities, this is an opportunity for students to exhibit leadership skills, right? I often get the question, obviously CTSOs, student organizations, you have your Skills USA, your DECA, your HOSA, your BPA. Those are all organizations that have projects, and just by their very nature of what they're doing with students exhibit leadership because there's officers, there's roles within there. So that is leadership 100%. But then I know that there are some districts who you might not be doing a CTSO right now, or you're new to the program, or maybe there's not funds and students there's all kinds of reasons, and I know, so I'm not going into all of those, but that doesn't mean you can't show leadership in other ways. So it could be through projects or activities where students can demonstrate leadership. One question I received is that, do you have to have a competition? Is leadership equal competition? And I'm like, well, I'm so glad that question came up, because that's actually not a requirement. Some teachers think that, oh, I'm going to do a competition, and just because it's a competition, that equals student leadership. And that's not true either. Now, if you're doing the competition and through that competition project, students are taking a role, they're taking a leadership role, they're having and running meeting minutes or running meetings in order to get to the end competition. Well, then there's leadership built into that project. But if you look at what OCT is, they defined the different levels of leadership that might be present in your class. So it could be that the students have an opportunity to demonstrate leadership individually, right? And that's level 1. And then maybe they are part of a team, and this is kind of they're doing this project and they become a team member, and they're not the leader, but they're part of it. And then the project manager, and so on and so forth. Now, I will say with this one, because I still want a little bit of clarification on like how we want to best demonstrate this for Macomb. And I want to communicate this to all of you, that the template is not out yet, that the ISD provided template. The state has one out there if you were to find it on their website. So feel free to use that, or maybe you have something that you want to use. But I will go into leadership. Probably second semester, you'll see something come out from me that'll help with this particular requirement. So I'm going to keep moving on. Again, though, it's no longer needs student names. It's following that same approach that the safety and the work-based learning did, where it's saying, okay, give me a snapshot of your program and give me all of the touch points where students have the opportunity to demonstrate leadership that are built into your program. And obviously for CO6, the only thing that's going to be uploaded for CO6 is your leadership template. And it looks like this, student leadership development. And when you upload it, it's looking for what are the leadership touch points that students can do in your class. So CO7, this is equity and access. Nothing really major changed in this arena as far as what to upload that used to be in Navigator that is now in the portal. They look for, is your room arrangement accessible to all students? Is your curriculum free of bias? What about your recruitment material? And if you look at what is actually required, this is not a challenging one to get in line and get in order if you don't have already. So I broke it out into 3 sections essentially, because that's how it is in the portal. The first section, what you would do is you would upload an assurance document, which you will find in that Google Drive. And this is something that the teacher and the CTE administrator would have to sign. It essentially is saying that you're ensuring that that classroom is accessible to students who might have difficulty getting around. You could also, if you didn't want to do the CO7 assurance document, you could upload like a whole bunch of pictures on a Word document with captions in lieu of this, or you could just upload this assurance document. In the second component, it would be, you would put your district equal opportunities compliance statement. Again, this is one that you might need to work with your district leadership. All districts have this. So don't think, oh my gosh, I don't think we have one. You do. Everybody has a district. You have this, trust me. So you want to find that and get that for my CTE leaders that are on here. You're going to want to gather that and get that to your teachers. This one is photos of your classroom environment showing and demonstrating equity with captions. So essentially what was happening is that when we were uploading into Navigator in the past, teachers would take and they would upload like 10 JPEG pictures, right? And we weren't really sure, like when you looked at them, like if you were OCT or if you were me reviewing it, I wasn't sure what I was looking at. I'm like, okay, it's a picture, but what is it? Is it the classroom? Is it the lab space? And I have to open each of them individually. So what they're asking for is, if you're going to upload photos, that you take a Word document, you put the photos on the Word document, you put a caption, like tell us, what are we looking at? This is the entryway to my classroom. This is the textbook that I teach out of. This is the poster, the NAEP poster that we use, and I talk about, equal opportunity or whatever you end up taking a picture of. But you're going to want to say what the picture is of, and you can put as many pictures as you want in that Word file. And then that's the only thing you upload, that one Word doc. Well, technically they want you to convert it to a PDF. So that's that section. And then recruitment materials or brochures. Do you have I know CPC has a open house that they advertise their CTE programs. And I believe a few years ago, they were very good. I know Pankow does too. And you guys put your equal opportunity or non-discrimination statement on that flyer. That's what would go there. So it's your recruitment material, any brochures, but you want to make sure that they have that statement on there. So keep that in mind. So that's CO7. You'll see, classroom materials, program recruitment. That's what it looks like in GEMS. And then the last section, before we start playing around in the system, is the secondary, post-secondary connection. Now, this is one that actually did change quite a bit. And I don't believe that I haven't done a video or anything on this. So I'm going to go through what those changes are and what to expect. And I think a lot of this one will make probably more sense once you see it live in the system. So what they've done is, if you remember Navigator, we would say, yep, we have it. And what would fit for this section would just be the fact that we had an articulation agreement and we'd be compliant. That's what we needed, because it had that or in it. It was like this or this or this, like do put one. That's not how the new guidance is. And that's because Perkins 5 has a really strong tone on work-based learning and pathway and program of studies and articulated. Like that's really it's all throughout the Perkins 5 legislation. So now we have to address program of studies, right? Which some of you had them, or maybe you had them in the past and they were a little bit more generic, or they felt generic, or they're just out of date. If you still have a great program of study that you use and that your CTE director has, blessed, then you can use that. But what I was finding is that we had a hole in program of studies for our region. We just did. I knew when I was a teacher, I didn't really have a good one, or one that I would point students to. So this was the program of study is a project that I started to tackle at the ISD. I'm going to create templates, program of study templates for each SIP code. And I'm going to fill out the post-secondary portion. And then you're going to get it and fill out your portion. And I'll walk through that in just a second. Industry credentials, this was a big change too, because they're having us identify if you have a Perkins 5 approved credential, and I'll show you what those are. And then you upload, there is a credential template, and then there's also a section if you don't have an approved credential, but you offer a certification or a credential, you could upload that. And then there's a separate section for articulated credit. So there's a lot in this section that really they're asking you to address individually. So let's look at the first one. Oh, actually, I'm going to look at credentials first. So these are a list of programs that have for this year an approved Perkins 5 credential that is defined, okay? So if you're not on this list, that means that OCT has not said this is the mandatory list of credentials that we're going to track for your class. That doesn't mean that you're still not offering certifications. That's where that additional certification comes in. So if you're in Microsoft, you may be doing Excel or Word, or if you're in cybersecurity, maybe you're doing IT or Cyber Essentials, or there's all kinds of credentials I know that are happening out there. But these are the list of the ones that are defined. It looks like this. So state approved credentials. It's actually like 10 pages long. This link will take you to their full list. But I was to show you, I do believe I have it open right there. So you'll see this full list. And I think I have this in the Google Doc as well. But you'll see that they give you a span of different in each one, except for, a few, like drafting, it's saying Autodesk. We don't have line worker. Welding is the Sense certification, which is not ideal for how we do welding in our area. Public safety, unfortunately, the only one that they've defined is firefighting. So if you're teaching public safety, but you're teaching law enforcement, then essentially, yes, you have an approved credential, but you're not going to offer firefighting 1 and 2. Healthcare is CNA and EMT. Auto, it could be any one of these entry level from MLR. So keep that in mind. It's any one of them. Collision, kind of same thing. They give you the list. I'm not going to go through these because not all you teachers on here have those. Switch back. So those are the ones that are defined. And then we have our credential template. So one of the things when I was looking at this, it was asking, I thought it was kind of maybe silly for us to create 2 different templates. I thought that was confusing. and more work than maybe needed to be done. So I'm going to show you the template and walk through the thinking on this, because essentially you would upload this twice under each section. So again, you'll notice it's that same flavor and feel. You would put in the credential name, where students are receiving this credential, the number of students that are eligible, the number of students that achieved it, maybe the date range, maybe it's if you do it for a week, it's, or like end of April. So it could be a range, or it could be everybody on this date got it, however that works. And then I put in, is it a Perkins approved or is it not a Perkins approved? So if I was indeed teaching public safety and I was giving that firefighting 1 and 2, then I would put yes, that is a Perkins approved. If I'm teaching in health and students are doing EMT, I would put yes. Now, if I am in medical health and I'm doing a certification, I'm doing CPR and they all receive their CPR training, I'm still going to list it here, but I'm going to put no, because that's not one of the ones that they defined. And I did provide a link to the ones that would be the Perkins. In this list, SIP codes are going to get added to this. Actually, if you weren't teaching in one of those listed programs, everything on this sheet is going to be no, because none of them are Perkins approved credentials, because they didn't go through that process. So this one, this is a new thing for us. We haven't done this as far as Navigator or CIP Self review as formally as this. But I feel like by just kind of tracking credentials throughout the years to say this many students were eligible, this many students got it, it was one on the list from CTE or it wasn't one on the list from CTE. And then when I go and I show you, so let me go back here really quick. So, oh, did I not? Hold on. Okay, so I will show you here where I say what to upload. Credential template. You'll see why I put it twice, because it's the same thing, but they do have 2 spots when we go live into the system. So you don't have to create 2 documents anymore, but you might have to put this document up in 2 different spots, depending on if you have a Perkins program or not. It'll make sense when you see it. I trust me. So moving to the program of study, all programs of study I said are being redone. My goal is to have them done by the end of February. I will have informational video that comes out that shows you how to use it, where to put it. You also might receive additional information from your CTE directors. They might do something first and then give it to you. That's kind of how they're going to roll it out in the district. But essentially the secondary or the post-secondary section, I will have filled out and you'll just fill out the top. So this is what it looks like right now. And you will not find this template in that Google Drive yet, because I'm still working with it. I don't want it in there yet, but I do want to give you a little bit of a screenshot. So they're pretty much look like this. The top portion, this is where you would come in and you would you'd fill in what students do. Obviously, here's your CTE, maybe suggested electives. And this is a conversation you would have with your CTE administrators on how you want to handle this. It's also an opportunity for you to tie in specific careers that you actually talk about and you train on in your course. It might look different. Each business courses are different. We all have a little different flavor. So this is the top portion. And then the bottom, this is what would be filled out by me. So like I have finance done already. And I took a Macomb Community College pathway. I took one of their degree programs and I put in all the courses and the credit hours that would be tied to that. So you could say to a student, well, if you're not really sure, but you really liked accounting, why don't you start here? Now you're on your next step. Like this is a jumping off point. But it also mentions that this is just one example and that they should contact for more. Like they really do need to go the distance. And technically, if you wanted to switch out and maybe you tie and you do a program of study and you're really connected to XYZ program at Ferris State University, that's up to you. I'm just trying to fill in the bottom so everybody at least has a starting point and a solid program of study with a post-secondary. So when we, and then our articulation agreements, we are in the process of fixing the articulation process with Macomb. All of our articulation agreements are being extended throughout this school year, so they're all good. Even if you look at yours and it says that it's expired, if you go to their website, which I believe I provided the link in the previous slide, there's a link to a document that extends the articulation for all students. So they are still good. So you'll see that you would upload a program of study coming soon, pathway documents, which the pathway documents are in the Google folder. I'll show you that. The credential template, your articulation agreement, and then there are 3 questions. So you see there's your post-secondary program of study. This is what it looks like in the portal.